Howdy y'all, I'm Woody, back again with the second sneak peek for the upcoming June 12th Clash Royale update. Really excited to get to talk about these 4 new cards with my longtime friend, Yarn from Orange Juice. Thank you very much for joining me on the channel here. How you doing today, man?
What's up, Woody? I'm doing really good. I'm excited to be joining you for the channel. I love these talks. What are we going to be doing today?
We're going to be looking at each of the 4 new cards that are going to be releasing over the next few weeks and months. We're going to talk about them in order, so I'd like to start with the least rare one so far, the common card. It's the Skeleton Barrel. This is a really interesting card. It's kind of like a hybrid between Goblin Barrel, Balloon, and maybe even something like an Ice Golem? I don't know. It feels like it's a good distraction kind of kiting card, but then also can push in and deal quite a bit of damage if it's ignored.
Yeah, it's a skeleton party in the sky. It really feels like a hybrid of like a balloon graveyard kind of thing, because it targets buildings. So what it does is it flies towards the building and then it pops, and it says that it spawns 8 skeletons. So it's almost like an instant graveyard if you can let it connect to your tower. So it's like a balloon graveyard battle ram. you don't want it to connect, I guess.
Yeah, it'll do a ton of damage. 8 skeletons right on there. That's pretty much what you would come to expect. If you get like a really good graveyard connection, you can stack up 8. So the fact that it can spawn right away, that's going to do a ton of damage. What are some cards that you think are going to work well with this one? I think maybe like Miner to provide some tanking in there might work well. Anything else?
Oh yeah, Miner always works well with things that spawn on their side of the map. Other things that are going to work well with that will be even Graveyard, because it's going to synergize with, it's going to ramp up the skeletons really quickly. You know how Graveyard needs like a Knight or an Ice Golem to tank just so that the skeletons can start ramping up? Well, on the way towards the tower, that balloon itself acts as a shield for the 8 skeletons that it carries, so it kind of is like a tank. It's like a battle ram shield-ish.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
It's got a shield out in front. It's like a single body, and then it provides a swarm effect, deals tons of damage to ground troops. I'm really stoked on the Skeleton Barrel. I think it's going to really shake up the metagame by providing like a new way to swarm your opponent that like specifically targets buildings. Because every time we get a new card that doesn't target buildings, I'm like, is this really going to be viable? Is it going to work well on offense? You know, I was underestimating the abilities of the Battle Ram. I think that a lot of players are going to underestimate the Skeleton Barrel because it seems like a really intuitively difficult to understand, but like very fun to play card.
Yeah, and it only costs 3 elixir for that. I think, left alone, if my simulation in my head is kind of correct, 8 skeletons will, right in front of the tower, is going to deal like 1,000 damage or something like that. So it's going to be really devastating, ignored. I wonder if a Valkyrie can counter it.
Yeah, I think that she'll probably do a pretty good job, but you got to get the timing exactly right. Those 8 skeletons are going to spawn relatively close to each other, but if you don't get her placed in the exact right spot, you're going to take some stabs on the tower. 8 skeletons is way more damage per second than 3 goblins, so just in terms of the total damage per second that you're getting there, it's pretty good. I mean, they're only going to die to 1 shot from the tower, so it's going to be a real quick up and down attack, but if you can get them to lock, maybe even with like a rage spell, I would really like to try like Lumberjack with these guys.
Yeah, it's going to be really, really interesting. With 8 skeletons just bursting onto the tower, 67 times 8 is like a little bit over 500 damage, so it's going to be something you cannot ignore. It's kind of like a Goblin Barrel. I really like that it targets buildings and it's flying. Like I said earlier, it's kind of like a balloon. So I'm going to assume that it has the same sight range and aggro range. So to pull it, if you plant it in the very corner, like say behind the chain, you're going to have to put it at a 4-1 plant. So 4 tiles from the river and 1 tile from your arena tower. So it's going to be a little bit harder to defend against buildings, but it has 636 health. So it's going to be stopped really easily by Musketeer, Bats, Electro Wizard, anything that targets air. The move speed is really slow. Oh, sorry, the move speed is medium, and it only has 600 health. It's going to be very difficult to connect, but, I mean, no one's going to send it in alone, right? It's a 3 elixir card. You're going to have a lot more to push. So,
exactly. Well, I think that's a good wrap for the Skeleton Barrel. Excited to see when this card comes out. But the next one that we've got for you here today is the Flying Machine. It's a rare card, costs 4, and I kind of like to think of it as like a flying Dark Goblin kind of Musketeer combo. You know, it doesn't do a whole lot of damage. It's about the same as a Dark Goblin, and it doesn't have a whole lot of health. It's actually going to die to Fireball or a well-placed poison if you can keep it in there long enough. But the fact that it can fly means that it can split lanes. If your opponent is attacking from one lane, you can play the Flying Machine in the center, have it snipe that down, then go to the opposite side. It's sort of, in some ways, like a Mega Minion that works at range, even though it's got lower DPS. It can still fly pretty high and is relatively tanky. What are your thoughts on the Flying Machine, Yarn?
I think it's a flying Dart Goblin. That being said, it's still really creative because it's flying, so because it's flying, and it has almost the same range. It's at 6 tiles. The Dart Goblin's what, 6.5 tiles?
Yeah.
But the flying aspect of that changes the mechanic completely. Let's see, the Dart Goblin is very fast move speed, whereas this is just a fast move speed. And ground air. The thing about this flying machine is that it's going to be able to snipe Inferno Tower right across the river from the regular 4-3 plants, maybe even 3-3. I think if you plant in the very center, if you saw my sight ranges video, you'll see like there's like a four tile dead zone. So I think it can actually fly really, really deep to get spawners and all the other active buildings. Just because the active buildings are a little bit faster or fatter, the active ones being, or the passive ones. So the passive ones will be Elixir Pump, all the spawners and all that stuff.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a great like spawner killer. I think it's going to work particularly well against the slower and kind of the short-range units. I'm really sad that it's actually got the 6-tile range, though. I wish it were more like a Dart Goblin, and that it could start like sniping down buildings. That might be a little bit overpowered, but I feel like without that ability, it's going to die to Tesla, it's going to die to Inferno Tower. It's not going to be able to kill a whole lot of things and like go on the counter push. As long as those things are able to shoot back, right? It'll be great against ground troops, but then again, Mega Minion is too. What do you think are the use cases for the Flying Machine that a Mega Minion would not also be able to fulfill?
It's a little bit weaker than the Mega Minion. I feel like it's more of a sniping thing. Like, where was the Flying Machine when the Furnace was meta? You know?
Yeah.
It is 4 Elixir. That is what makes it a little bit... I don't know, because the Mega Minion is 3 Elixir. So this is a little bit more costly. At 4 Elixir, it trades with a Fireball. This isn't something I want to be planting in the back of my King's Tower if I know they have a spell.
Yeah, definitely not. So spells will be a pretty good counter to it. Anything that can deal a relatively decent amount of air damage can take it out. I mean, you could swarm it pretty well. I don't think that it can one-shot a minion, so even 3 Elixir minions might be a decent counter to it. I'm not really very energized about this card. I think it might get a buff, because it seems to me like it actually might be a little bit underpowered. But any other final thoughts on Flying Machine before we move on?
The thing that makes it unique, though, is that it's got a really high damage. It's 142 damage per attack. So that's gonna... Oh, that's not gonna kill the Stab Goblins, but it will one-shot Spear Goblins and smaller things like that.
Ooh, it one-shot Spear Goblins. Look out, the Flying Machine's gonna be killing all your Spear Goblins now.
Hey, the Goblin Gang still has 2 Spear Goblins in there. You gotta watch out for the gang still.
That's true. I'm looking out for the gang. If I have too much trouble, maybe the Flying Machine will take them down. But the next card is kind of interesting. I got it kind of in the same like tier of interest as the Flying Machine. I'm a little underwhelmed about it. It's the Cannon card. It's a cannon on wheels, basically, so it does a little bit more DPS than a cannon. But when it dies, it sits there just like in Clash of Clans and becomes like just like another cannon. That'll draw in troops that are targeting buildings, and it will lose hit points over time, just like a standard cannon. It seems kind of like a trash can on wheels, to be honest. It's sort of like Sparky in some ways, in that I really kind of doubt that it'll ever be part of a big push, because it's so expensive, but doesn't really provide the like counter-offensive oomph that you need. Like, what I'm worried about is it's going to die out of range of the opponent's tower a lot of times. And it's just going to be there like a sitting duck waiting to die. But maybe I haven't figured out the good use for it yet. Yarn, what do you got for me here on this one, man?
It's 5 Elixir. It has 1400 health. It deals 200 damage. It's going to one-shot Stab Goblins, but it's not going to one-shot the Dart Goblin or the Princess, the loggable units. So I don't know about that. It's kind of an interesting card. It's a little bit too early to say. I'd love to start playing this card. It's got a fast move speed, so we'll see how that goes. 169 damage per second. It's going to be decent at taking care of maybe like a giant push, and then kind of converting into a counter push. I really like how once it's destroyed, it turns into a cannon. So it just kind of sits there, even on the enemy side. I think that's hilarious.
It does just sit there, and I think that that's kind of the one use case that we might see it in, like to counter a giant push, or maybe even a golem, but I feel like golem is probably too beefy. It'll probably pulverize this poor thing once it gets converted into the stationary cannon. I feel like for flavor it works well because it matches the Clash of Clans, cannon cart that moves in. Once it dies, it sits there. But it probably would have been even better if it starts out as a stationary building and then converts into something that can move. Because once it becomes planted, it's not going to move anywhere. You can really easily avoid it. Your opponent, is going to be able to play around it. I mean, you can play air troops on it to kill it. At 5 cost, I'm thinking the cannon cart's going to be a dud.
I don't think it's going to be a complete dud. I mean, the weakness is that it costs 5 elixir. I agree with you for that. It's too much of an investment just because it doesn't attack air. But it's a cool gimmick.
Yeah, it feels sort of like the skeleton in that I feel like I'm going to be able to shut down a push if I use it on that lane. Or, sorry, did I say giant skeleton? That's what I meant to say. Like a giant skeleton in that it'll shut down a push and it'll sit there and help defend that lane once it goes down. But yeah, it doesn't hit air. It doesn't do splash damage. Once it becomes stationary, it's not going to help you on a counter push. It's just going to sit there and defend for you. Cannon cart is a
well, no, it can join the counter push because it's got wheels.
Well, yes, until the wheels go down. And I guess it's got about the same hit points as a barbarian, is that right? During each of its phases, the 696 hit points is just slightly more than a barbarian. So it won't die to fireball. Will die to lightning, though.
Well, it's 5 elixir, then Inferno Tower is 5 elixir. And then Inferno Tower deals more damage per second once it's ramped up. So it's going to deal with giants, golems a lot better. And they both have the same hit points. So from a defensive perspective, the Inferno Tower is way better, but it can counter push, so I think that's kind of hilarious. I don't think that it's classified as a building until the wheels fall off, though, so you're not going to be able to kite giants or anything like that while it's moving. So I think that's kind of a weakness.
Yeah, definitely right about that. I think it'd be really cool if it were a building at all times. Yeah, kiting giants would be a really good use case for it. Yeah, just be able to pull them over.
Would you want to kite a giant for 5 elixir? You're basically keeping him on the map longer, and you're now down 5 elixir. It's kind of a weird mechanic.
It'd be a strange mechanic, but yeah. That's all I got for the cannon cart. I am really excited about this next card, though. I don't know if it's going to be good or not. I really want it to be good, though, just because it's got so many unique mechanics. It's really flavorful card. It's the Mega Knight, a new legendary coming in at 7 cost. It's got about the same hit points as a giant or a P.E.K.K.A, but it's got mechanics that make it function a little bit more like a Dark Prince or like a bandit, sort of. It drops in and does damage immediately, like an Electro Wizard, and quite a bit of damage, too. 480 spawn damage at tournament rules with the level 1 Mega Knight. Then deals half that damage as he does an AoE attack right in front of him. He's got these 2 big maces for hands. And can smash things really hard. He can't quite kill archers in 1 hit, but he's almost able to do so, just a little bit short. And then whenever he sees a target that's kind of far away, he can jump on him and does splash damage when he lands.
But I do like that his spawn damage does 480. It's kind of like a centaur where it just stomps on top of everything. 480, that's gonna one-shot the archers. So from a defensive perspective, I think against giant with archers and a bunch of troops clumped up coming your way, plant them on top, archers die, smacks the Electro Wizard a couple times, that dies, now you don't have to worry about the giant, and you've got kind of like a P.E.K.K.A bandit that you have to deal with now.
Yeah.
This guy cannot be ignored. Once he connects to your tower, he deals so much damage. The advantage of him compared to having a P.E.K.K.A, they both cost 7 elixir, they both have the same health, but this guy might share the same movement speed, but he has that leap mechanic. It's exactly like the dash, but he leaps up in the air, which is really cool. He is not invulnerable in the air, though.
Not invulnerable. He actually is a little bit faster. I think he's got a medium move speed, and then with that jump range, he can get to a tower pretty dang quickly. Doesn't need to walk all the way to it. He'll dash at it, even at the 5 tower range there. So yeah, I agree with you, man. Mega Knight is absolutely bonkers. I love the concept for it. I think it'll work really well on defending against a big ground push and then going in for the counter push. The fact that it does AoE damage means that it's not quite so easily distracted as the P.E.K.K.A is. Mega Knight is like my favorite card, I think probably for the entire year so far, and I've had a lot of fun playtesting him. Yarn, what kind of other cards do you think will synergize well with the Mega Knight?
Mirror? He's broken. He's freaking broken.
Just like the Night Witch. He's gonna tear up this arena.
I really do think this is comparable to Night Witch broken. It's the mechanics are so ridiculous. His leap is way too powerful. Just like having him leap right onto the tower immediately like that, like a huge 330 hit point guy dealing 240 damage, area damage by the way. So if you plant a knight nearby, he's still going to be smacking that tower. I haven't really played the card yet, so I don't know his exact splash radius, but I'm pretty sure it's really big.
It is huge. I mean, the unit itself is really big. It's about the same size as the P.E.K.K.A, and it does AoE damage around him.
But just in the front, right?
I'm not actually entirely sure. That's a good question. I'll have to check on that.
I think it is.
Okay.
For the most part, his regular attack.
Yeah. I love the flavor of this card though. I feel like when they introduce really big cards like P.E.K.K.A and like Sparky, and like Golem and Lava Hound, they really want you to feel like, oh crap, like a huge monster is coming at you. And like the first time I played Mega Knight, I really got that feeling of like, oh my god, I got something really powerful on my side now. He's about to go wreck this tower. Let's do it, you know? So, Mega Knight, I'm really bullish on this one. Great card design. There's so many mechanics to it, you actually can't even fit all the stats in there. If you've seen the info page, it actually doesn't even have a damage per second in there because there's just not enough room for that stat. But at 240 damage over 1.8 second hit speed, it's pretty comparable to, what would that be like? Oh god, why would I come up with that question and then not know the answer? I think the Valkyrie is going to be a little bit more damage. It's going to be a little more damage than the Dark Prince, but since it does AoE and is relatively tanky, I think it'll be hard to shut it down. But counters for it will be things like Mega Minion, I guess. You will need to have a distraction for it, so probably some big body to be able to soak the hits will be helpful.
Yeah, but that's the thing, is that he's going to cost 7 Elixir to defend, to shut down, to take out on your side. And then he's going to take out everything that you use to defend him with. He's going to cancel it out on the side that he's attacking. So right off the bat, he's already a really broken card. I personally feel like his stats reflect a card that has 8.5 Elixir. So they need to tone it down a little bit. I mean, it's not too late. Maybe he's not going to be... We haven't even had the bats release yet, so there's still time to tweak it. But... And like we usually say, these stats are never set in stone. We said that the bats spawned at 5, but now they're at 4, and they haven't even been released yet. So these are always subject to change. But on face value, looking at these stats right now, I think they might still be tweaking it. It's kind of... It's Night Witch strong.
Yeah, he's really good. Do you happen to know the interaction with Inferno Tower? It seems like an Inferno Tower ought to be able to burn him down.
Oh yeah, the Inferno Tower will burn him down, but he's going to leap onto that tower really fast, so I don't think people are going to be sending him in by himself, so there's going to be some support. He's going to leap onto the Inferno Tower. There might be a Musketeer or an Electro Wizard supporting that, and the Inferno Tower is just going to crush it, or get crushed by that push.
Fair enough. Thank you very much for joining me, Yarn, today. I had a lot of fun talking about these 4 cards, man. You got anything that you want to say before I do an outro?
Drink orange juice. I don't know. But yeah, it was really fun. I love doing these talks with you guys. It's talking about balances, mechanics. I love the numbers and facts and all that stuff.
It's always a pleasure, sir. Thank you very much for coming onto the channel. I hope to have another discussion up for you guys soon, and another sneak peek not too long after this one. The June 12 update is going to be a great one. I'm really looking forward to it. Been playing it for a few days now and have really enjoyed checking out some of the new troops, all the new features. It's going to be an excellent one. I also hope that you'll tune into the Crown Championship. I'll be broadcasting the European region Sundays at 8 a.m. Pacific time. Until next time, guys, thanks for tuning in. Woody the Mortar Mauler, signing out.